All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of the Full Press Saints podcast. Of course, a part of the Full Press Coverage Network. Once again, it is your host, Alec, and here with Dayton today. We have a training camp edition podcast today, recapping everything that's happened with your New Orleans Saints through the first week of training camp, as well as some new and old faces at the facility. And, of course, the always ever-going battle between Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, and just some of our first thoughts from training from the first week of camp, as the Saints started padded practice Monday. So, super excited about that. The NFL is now officially back in full swing with the first preseason game kicking off Thursday night, Cowboys-Steelers in the Hall of Fame game. So, Dayton, we are that much closer to the season starting here. How are we feeling, and how are you doing, more importantly?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm glad that we are all healthy now. It's good to have you back. Also, I am so excited for football to be back. I might be more excited for football to be back, even a preseason game like we'll see in the Hall of Fame game, than almost anything. I mean, anything else starting, I honestly do not get as excited football. This upcoming Sunday is the last Sunday without football until, I think, February. So that's pretty incredible. Or I guess January, the break between the championship game and but usually have the Pro Bowl in between. So pretty much every Sunday we'll have football until then. And then college football right after that. So, you know, how can you not be in a good mood when football is right around the corner? I mean,
I know. I'm
ecstatic.
hyped. I'm hyped. Hyped is, you know, that's not even a word I used to describe it. But of course, with Saints camp kicking off this week, we did have a couple new faces come to this roster, of course. The New Orleans Saints signed former Falcons running back and arch rival, and infamously, we've seen the beef between this player and the Saints, that being Devontae Freeman. He signs a one-year deal with the Saints, assumingly maybe to lessen the load for Latavius Murray. We're assuming Alvin Kamara is going to see a much bigger and a more expanded role in the passing game. So you bring in Freeman to be that, you know, hammer behind Latavius Murray, take out the pressure off of Kamara, and maybe Ty Montgomery play some receiver. But
yeah. Sean Payton actually came out and said, I believe it was a couple days ago in his presser, that Devontae Freeman signing will really benefit the team because they are planning on having Ty Montgomery work as a wide receiver during training camp and the preseason. So we kind of talked about that in the last episode, you know, with how poor this receiving core is shaping up to be, especially to begin the season. Is Ty Montgomery going to be getting a lot of looks? Well, yes, especially after this Devontae Freeman signing. So it'll be interesting to see Montgomery go over to his original position for the Saints. And it's going to be even more interesting to see Devontae Freeman put on a Saints jersey. We've seen him with the Saints sweatshirt he posted on his social media. Him wearing that, he said that, you know, he's kind of always been a fan of the team. Really talked about how when he was a Falcon that the Saints game was so big to them and how big of a rivalry it was. So to see him come over to the team is pretty shocking, but also it's an interesting reunion. I'm here for sure. I never would have thought that I would welcome Devontae Freeman just because of how good he was for the division rival Falcons. You know, of course, the rivalry is very cutthroat, but I really enjoy the signing, and it'll definitely take some pressure off the shoulders of Latavius Murray, and then, of course, being able to move Ty Montgomery over to receiver is very smart. One-year deal for Freeman. Just got done playing off a year deal with the Giants, and before that he was, of course, cut by the Falcons after being drafted by them and playing really, really well for them, especially in that Super Bowl run season. So I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do in camp. It's going to be, like I said, very interesting to see him with the Saints jersey on.
yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how many wide receivers and running backs this team carries into week one, just because there's so much uncertainty at the wide receiver position. Kwon Smith got banged up Wednesday. Wednesday? Tuesday.
Wednesday. So,
yeah, Tuesday. So Tuesday got banged up at practice. Obviously, we know there could be some kind of suspension looming for Deontay Harris. So it makes him wonder, would the Saints maybe consider bringing in or keeping Kamara, Murray, Montgomery, Freeman, Dwayne Washington on this roster. 5 running backs going into week 1. It's going to be interesting to see how all that pans out. And I think
you go.
No,
sorry,
go
but that's a good point, because if you go 5 running backs, then you can go 5 receivers, I guess, to open it up if you want. But it's going to be really interesting. It depends on what time Montgomery's listed at. I think he's always going to be listed at running back. So yeah, you're going to carry 4 to 5 running backs on the roster. So and then that takes away from other positions.
And then of course the big question is, if you bring in 5 backs, so who are the 4 or 5 receivers you carry on your active roster week 1, which is obviously something we're going to see later on in the preseason when a lot of these guys get some real competitive football going on, which I'm excited about. But I think another thing that needs to be brought up, with the Devontae Freeman signing, Good Morning Football, and I'm not trying to poke fun at them, just they were the ones that talked about it today, Wednesday morning. What would the workload for Alec Kamara look like post Drew Brees with the Mike Thomas injury, with the Devontae Harris suspension, the possible Kwon injury? Like, what would his workload look like now that, seemingly he has to carry this offense? And I think all 3 or 4 of them said the Saints need to just give this guy 30-plus touches or carries a game, which to me makes no sense. I get it, AK is your best player probably on this offense. And you want to get his hands in the ball as much as you can, but at the same time, you don't want to overwork him, especially with an extra game added on. And let's be honest, this team is probably not going to be a 1 seed in the NFC. They're going to play maybe the additional wildcard round as well. So you're already talking 17 games plus the 3 to 4, 5 games at most in the postseason. You don't want to do that kind of damage. That's how you ruin running backs' careers. I mean, that's how.
And that's why Kamara's been able to stay so fresh, is because Sean Payton understands the limitations that he needs to give his star players, or star running backs more importantly. You need to kind of scale it back. Also, Kamara is just so good in the passing game. I mean, you can utilize him as a receiver out of the backfield or in the slot. Getting those touches can be more valuable than having him run in between the tackles inside. I mean,
and that's why you bring in a guy like Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and Devontae Freeman is also kind of a do-it-all. I mean, at least in his prime, he's kind of a do-it-all guy. Catch out of the backfield. He can run in between the tackles, run outside the numbers. I mean, very skilled back. So, yeah, I mean, Latavius Murray is your downhill runner, though. I mean, Latavius Murray is a big body guy, bowling ball. We even see him in the playoffs a season ago, how he was just able to will himself into the end zone strictly off of his strength and downhill running ability. So, I love this move, but those comments made by Good Morning Football are just kind of there to stick, to make news, and obviously it did. They got a lot of interactions from that video on Twitter. Kyle Brandt is the king of that. I think Kyle Brandt, he's the most overrated football analyst.
And I love the show, by the way. Let me just point that. I love
the show's
football.
Great.
Yeah,
show's great. But Kyle Brandt, I think, says a lot of, and it's not really. They're like subtly outlandish things, to where then if you dig deeper, it's like, do you actually watch what you're talking about?
It's either very outlandish or they just strictly throw numbers and stats at you.
Exactly.
And then they try to make it make sense with the numbers. But if you watch the game and just know how the team works,
right.
It doesn't make sense.
You know what? Kamara very well could get 30. I mean, maybe Sean Payton does change it up with the quarterback situation and with Kamara. I mean, he signed to this extension, so, you want to get your money's worth out of him. But also, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's not broke, don't fix it, because what Kamara's been doing has been phenomenal. Over 81 catches every season he's been in the league. That is unheard of. That's unheard of for running backs.
Yeah.
And he is just absolutely killing it. So, I mean, I hope the Saints stick with the same game plan, work in Latavius Murray a little bit more. But, if you're able to balance all these rushers, keep guys healthy, that's going to bode really well for this team, who is facing, injury to Michael Thomas, suspension to David Onyemata, and most likely a suspension to another receiver, Devontae Harris.
Lattimore also.
And, of course, Lattimore. And that's so up in the air, because I feel like we would have heard something by now.
Right, because
but
Onyemata's
what do I know?
Happened early on in the offseason. The NFL came down pretty relatively quickly, knowing how the NFL works with these kinds of things. So,
right.
I mean, hey, we could get lucky for once and maybe they don't not drop their hammer on us. We will wait and see. But, of course, another face was brought into Saints, into the to the Saints this past yesterday, actually, correct? Or was it today?
Which movie? You talking about Kwon Alexander?
Yeah. Is that yesterday or today?
Kwon,
Maybe I'm getting my days mixed up here.
So that's today, and by today we mean Wednesday. We're recording on Wednesday. Oh yeah, actually that you know what? Now that you say it, that was yesterday.
It was yesterday, right? Yeah,
you were right originally.
Tuesday.
You're confusing me. I didn't even know who you were talking about at first.
The COVID.
They've signed so many guys. The
COVID brain's got me all mixed up on my days here.
There you go.
But yeah, so Kwon Alexander 1-year deal worth the $3 million. A significantly reduced price considering the deal he was on earlier this offseason. We felt like once the Saints released him that this was his number one choice to come back to the Saints because it seemed like he immediately came in and gelled with Demario Davis and instantly made this defense much better. It took it to a higher level than what we thought was possible. So he seemed hyped. I'm sure, as we all know, Demario Davis was pretty hyped on Twitter about it. He's back, and I love it. I really do.
Everyone was hyped about it on Twitter.
I love it.
Saints, Who Dat Nation, everybody now. And Sean Payton did come out today, again, addressing the team, saying that Kwon...
I love this answer so much.
His ability... I don't even think you know what I'm talking about.
No. I thought you meant the other comment.
Actually, now that you mentioned it, though, there were two comments. I was saying Kwon's health is up in the air for week one.
Right.
Sean Payton doesn't know if Kwon's going to be able to play week one. He also said that he was getting tired of looking at the workout videos being posted on social media of Kwon Alexander looking so good. Of course, you guys have all seen that. Videos of him as if he, again, this is a guy coming off a major injury that ruins a lot of careers, and he is back
late in the season,
late in the season, and he's recovered super quickly. So a lot of credit to him. I'm really glad that he's back. The Saints had an 81.2 rushing grade according to PFF, and that was after that Kwon Alexander came onto the team, and that was up from a high 70s rushing grade that the defense had for the season before Kwon came on the team. So he supports the run really well. Again, his pass coverage is neither here nor there, but you got Demario Davis for that. And, of course, drafting Pete Warner was good. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's going to play a lot in the slot, so that will leave only two linebackers on the field a lot of the time.
Malcolm Jenkins, too, possibly.
Malcolm Jenkins, well, yeah, of course.
In the box, yeah.
But But Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's going to take snaps away from linebackers. So, you need two really solid linebackers. And if you're able to have Demario Davis and then swap out Kwon with Pete Warner, Zach Bond possibly playing on the outside, that's a really good formula. And they got him at a fantastic price. So, great move.
Yeah, I mean, and, with bringing Kwon Alexander back, it can help. And I see a lot of people bring this up on Twitter. It's a really great point. It could kind of really help mask the Saints' lack of depth at the defensive tackle position, allowing you to bring all those guys in the box to help out the tackle spot with Onyemata suspended. They lost Sheldon Rankins, Malcolm Brown in free agency and trade. So bringing in two linebackers who can not only blitz the run pretty doggone well, but also just their veteran experience and their ability to maybe identify plays before they even happen could help out this run defense a lot more now that Kwon Alexander is back. It also takes pressure off Pete Warner and Zach Bond, maybe you give those guys more time to, sit and learn and develop. And in Zach Bond's case, it helps him out a lot more because when you think about it, he was a outside 3-4 linebacker, an edge guy who is now trying to learn a 4-3 defense in a base linebacker system. So, or I guess a base defense, he's a 4-3 linebacker. So, and then last year, no offseason really due to COVID. This year, he's really this is his first chance to learn a whole new position and maybe get some meaningful snaps. So, once Kwon is back and practicing, to learn from him and just see how he plays the position so effortlessly, could help him out in the long run. So,
yes. I'm a former LSU guy as well. So
yeah, finally another LSU player is on the Saints roster. Or the only one at that.
I believe.
No, Will Clapp's still there, right?
Clapp. Yeah, Will Clapp.
Will Clapp's still there. But I love the move. I think we all thought this was going to happen at some point, right?
Yeah. I mean, the writing was on the wall. Nobody else was really, at least from what we know, nobody's really going after him. And also, Kwon Alexander, part of the reason he did take this quote-unquote pay cut is because he did get paid for this upcoming season. It just, the amount of money counting against the Saints cap wasn't the full amount that it would have if they kept him. He didn't make all of the money that he could have, but all the guaranteed money he signed on that big contract with the Niners, he's made, and he did get paid for at least what I think the $7 million whatever hit that he ended up having on the team. Like, he still gets paid that money, so he's able to take a pay cut, come back to the team. Everybody wins this situation, and that speaks to the Saints organization that they're able to cut high quality player, even though he's returning from a really big injury. He was looking really solid. Could have honestly signed with almost any team if he truly is as healthy as he's looking in those videos. Chose to come back for the team on a good contract.
And as you mentioned, I think that speaks to the amount of respect players have for Mickey and Sean.
Exactly.
As far as
the whole organization,
them owning up to their word and keeping their word.
Right. Absolutely.
Because I just saw, if you guys watch or I guess listen or watch the Patrick Peterson, Brian McFadden podcast, I forget what it's called off the top of my head. But Pat P talked about how the Cardinals did him dirty, this past offseason. And they were kind of, basically straight up lying to his face about how they were going to do him in the offseason. And that was a guy who you drafted, was a, Pro Bowler, one of the best, maybe the best for a short period in his prime. And he wanted out, and the Cardinals talked to him, and he stayed for, I believe, another year or two. And he talked about how they basically went out and, lied to him about how they're going to do him. And it's like, that kind of thing makes players not want to go when it comes out, So
look how the Panthers have treated some legends, how they treated Cam Newton, how they treated Steve Smith.
Steve Smith, yeah.
A lot of people angry about that. I mean, it's just, the Saints really are a world-class organization. Janoris Jenkins earlier this offseason on a podcast.
Yep.
Or is that what you,
yep.
So he also said Saints probably the best organization he's played for. And speaking of Giants cornerbacks, Saints actually signed 3 cornerbacks recently.
Yep.
The first was most notable, Prince Amukamara, of course, former first-round pick of the New York Football Giants. So
Super Bowl champion.
Super Bowl champion Prince Amukamara, put the respect on his name. So if you keep in count, that is 3 former Giants cornerbacks coming to the Saints over the span of 3 years. First it was Eli Apple, then it was Janoris Jenkins, and now you have Prince Amukamara, who most recently played for the Chicago Bears.
Right.
And really has just been an up-and-down kind of depth, but he has played significant snaps for a lot of teams, including the Bears, of course. So
Jaguars.
That's a good veteran signing. That's right, he was on the Jaguars. Yeah. I always forget that he was on the Jaguars. The other 2 that they signed, kind of lesser notable guys, but both have played pretty significant time in the NFL. The first was Kavari Russell. He was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs back in 2016 in the 3rd round, but he was cut just because, he couldn't understand the defensive schemes, according to Andy Reid. So he got cut. Lands with the Bengals, plays for them for a few years. He was actually born in Everett, Washington, which is only a few hours away from where I live, so that's kind of cool. So he's back on the team, or not back on the team, but he's back on a team, and that team happens to be the Saints. He played for the Packers last season. 5'11", 196-pound cornerback. He's 27 years old. And then you have Adonis Alexander. He was a 6th-round pick in the supplemental draft by the Redskins back in 2018. He's only 24 years old, 6'3", 205. He's kind of fitting more of that outside press corner mold that the Saints like. He played for a couple seasons with the Redskins, bounced around on the practice squad with the Rams and the Niners, but he was ruled academically ineligible at Virginia Tech for his final year, which prevented him from entering the 2018 draft. So he entered the supplemental draft and ends up getting picked by the Redskins. Of course, that's more of a difficult road for NFL players, even compared to the difficult road that NFL draftees face. Supplemental draft, it's very, very tough to kind of make your way. It's been done. So, he could show a lot of promise for this cornerback-needy team. Cornerback, wide receiver are the 2 most, obviously, biggest needs of depth for the Saints, and starters, period, honestly. So anything the Saints can get, they're going to take. So I enjoy those signings. They're kind of lesser-known guys. They're younger guys, though, 24 and 27, Prince Amukamara being the veteran, but he can play. So overall, I like him, even though it's 2 guys that I had to really look up and research for. I think that they're good moves. It's no Dre Kirkpatrick or anything like that, but they're good moves.
Yeah, and with Keith Washington, he went on into reserve today. So he is out indefinitely for the foreseeable future. And one more note out on Namukamara. He is a guy who, if I'm correct, and I'm pretty sure I am, he has spent the majority of his career on the outside, playing strictly outside boundary corner. So
right. That's what he was drafted for out of Nebraska.
Right,
he was known for
being a outside guy.
Yeah.
So, we talked about last week how they brought in Brian Poole, and maybe Brian Poole was just probably the best corner available on the market, but he specializes in the slot. But that's not going to stop the Saints from having a talented corner. And they now add a guy who, as you mentioned, has played a lot of snaps in the NFL: the Giants, the Bears, the Jaguars, and he was with the Cardinals last year on the practice squad, but didn't play at all. So he was in shape last year, nonetheless. So, if he's a guy who can just defend and not get interceptions, then hey, okay, that's cool. We'll take it. But as you mentioned, cornerback, wide receiver, it's some real interesting talk about. So really quick, let's talk about the wide receiver group real quick. As we know, Deontay Harris could be facing a suspension. So with that being said, I mean, look, where do we go from here? Because we know Traquan Smith got banged up. It's basically Marquez Callaway and a bunch of unknown guys, relatively speaking. So why don't you shed some light on some of these guys and maybe give me a sense of feel where you think this team is at wide receiver-wise?
Yeah, it's really tough. Obviously, if the injury to Michael Thomas wasn't here, it would still be worrisome. But you add on that injury that he's going to miss most likely the first 6 weeks of the season, and it just continues to be a downward spiral for this team that had a very promising, overall wide receiver core even just a few years ago. I really enjoyed Brandon Coleman on this team. Michael Thomas, of course, made that well. But even last season, Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, that's a nice 1-2 punch. You put Traquan Smith, Deontay Harris, swap them in and out of the slot. You got Marquez Callaway playing really well as an undrafted rookie. But, of course, injuries happened to Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. A contract is too expensive. Saints had to move on. And this is what you're left with. So Chris Hogan is going to be playing significant time. There's no doubt about that. There was also a injury to, I believe it was Traquan Smith, during practice yesterday, and it sounds like it's just a question mark right now as to what's going to happen. So the wide receiver core is just, I'm not going to say abysmal. We've talked about this. It's unproven, untapped potential, I guess, in that wide receiver core. But it's going to be really difficult to really make heads or tails of this without Michael Thomas. And if Traquan Smith is injured and Deontay Harris is out first few weeks of the season, you're just going to get a washed wide receiver core, and it's going to be really hard to evaluate. Preseason, though, we're going to be able to see a lot. We'll see a lot from quarterbacks as well, which is what I also want to talk about. Quarterbacks, also, if you guys don't follow Nick Underhill or subscribe to NewOrleans.football, be sure to check that out. Nick Underhill keeps up with everything at training camp.
Can we before we get to sorry, Dave, I just feel like we need to shout out everybody out there reporting from Saints camp, because
Ross was there today too. Ross Jackson.
In all seriousness,
shout out to him.
I've scrolled through other sports teams' Twitters, like I'll look up some of the top, the Cowboy guys, the Jets guys, even other sports. I'll look around the basketball, baseball, and I've yet to find a team that has as many people covering one team like the Saints do. You talk about Nick Underhill. Sure. You talk about Kat, Larry, Jeff, Ross Jackson, who's GOAT, by the way, Maddie, Chris. Ryan is great for follow. He's a great follow. I love Ryan to death. He's hilarious. And their podcast is also great. There are just so many people out there covering this team, and I do not see as a great of a core of reporters and well-opinionated people covering this team like any other sports team. So just really quick, shout out to all you guys, because you guys are the real GOATs. You guys give us all this great information and tidbits that we just talk about and people listen to. You guys are the real sources. So just praise, kudos to all you guys, because you guys are great.
Yeah, there's only a handful of practices open to the public, so they're really doing a great job above and beyond their due diligence to keep us updated.
They're great.
Nick Underhill does it better than anybody else, in my opinion.
He's been so hyped about this QB battle, too.
and and that's exactly what I'm getting. Thank you so much, Alec. Thank you so much for interrupting me to tell me the point that I'm about to make. So if you follow Nick Underhill on Twitter, he's actually keeping track of all the reps that these quarterbacks are throwing.
Yep.
So Taysom Hill is currently 36 of 50. Jameis Winston, and this is over, of course, the first week of training camp. We're already pretty much a week into training camp.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis is 36 of 52, and 2 of the incompletions that he had, Nick Underhill mentions, were pass interference was. So if you he's 36 of 50 as well. So they've both been throwing the ball really, really well. Now, in terms of actual exciting plays, sounds like more is coming out of Winston than Hill, but they both had their respective shares of highlights so far in camp. And let's see, Ian Book is 22 of 30.
He's actually looked very impressive.
Yes.
He's looked much better than advertised from what I've heard everyone tweeting about at camp.
Agreed. I mean, he's just a small body, and some of these throws that you do watching him they're either checkdowns or they're just very simple flow pattern routes. But I mean, still that's really, really good. Going up against NFL practice defenses, that's still impressive. Trevor Siemian, 9 of 19. Interesting, especially since this is the dude. Trevor Siemian has more quarterback experience than Hill and Ian Book.
I just love how you say 9 of 19. You pause and go, interesting.
Yeah,
camp body.
It's only 20 reps, so it's a small sample size, but still, it's like you go 9 of 19. That's
he's the camp arm.
Another guy impressing in camp, and I think this is only really happening because he's going up against what would be considered D-level receivers on other teams.
Go on.
Ken Crawley. Crawley.
I thought you were going to say Lattimore.
Oh well, Lattimore impresses and Lattimore was impressing even before Traquan Smith got hurt.
Actually, if you really think about it, real quick, Lattimore lining up these D-level receivers is actually very impressive when you think about the way he plays. D-level receiver.
Right?
When you think about the way he plays D-level receivers in the NFL, this is very positive.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. That's interesting now that I think about it, though. Yeah, Marshall Lattimore is also going up against these scrubs, but that is a good point. But Ken Crawley's been impressive, according to Nick Underhill and everybody else out there. Peyton Turner has been getting some better looking reps out, and both Sean Payton and Nick Underhill have talked about that as well. There's a punt battle going on right now. And Nick Underhill lists all of it in his report on NewOrleans.football. But essentially, the biggest thing is that Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill are both impressing a lot at quarterback in camp. Cornerback, the depth is looking pretty good. I mean, the fact that Ken Crawley is looking decent, I don't know what to think about that, but that's a better sign than him looking bad. So I'll take it at this point.
Debo has 2 picks, right, so far?
Yes, and Paulson, Adebo is looking pretty good, playing on the outside and inside. But again, from what we've seen, I think he's better fitted for the outside. So, and Ken Crawley had a few pass breakups, a couple of interceptions. So, but quarterback, cornerback, wide receiver, positions to watch for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just one more thing to add. I think Taysom, from what I've seen, and I know the clips on Twitter, they only want to show the highlights, like the really good plays. But just from what I've seen and what I heard, Taysom actually has looked much better than I would have anticipated so far throughout camp, I think for a guy who we saw, through 4 games this past year, right? 4 games, if I'm right? Or was it 6?
For the suspension?
For Taysom. When Drew got hurt, it was Taysom.
Oh, gotcha. It was...
Was it 4 or 6?
I think it was 5.
Oh, was it 5? Okay.
Yeah, it was either 5 or 6. It was more than 4.
So, for 5 games, we saw Taysom Hill last year, right? And I think a lot of us felt very on the fence from the beginning of that experiment and felt the same way afterwards. Excuse me. Right. So, I mean, to see the throws he's made, and they look like impressive throws. It looks like Taysom has really kind of bunkered down and tried to be a better quarterback, not just an all-around player like he usually is. So, he's looked good. But so is Jameis.
Yes.
And I still think this job is Jameis's to lose, just because I feel like with the lack of depth at tight end and just kind of the overall question mark at wide receiver, I feel like the Saints almost need Taysom Hill to play tight end / receiver / blocking H-back, whatever, So I feel like this team almost needs Jameis, excuse me.
Wow.
They need Jameis Jameis. Good lord. They need Jameis to start at quarterback so Taysom can help out this team win games the ways Taysom has done in the past. And I'll admit, he's looked much better as a quarterback.
Yeah. And you need Taysom as that Swiss Army knife guy.
Yeah, I feel like
you can't have that if he's your starting quarterback.
Especially now with so much lack of at these skill positions.
Yes.
But I mean,
so I'm shocked that he's still getting this many quarterback reps.
Yeah, because as far as from what I've seen, it seems like each guy gets at least a day or two with the ones, and then they switch.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean's given this a fair this is a fair competition as far as I'm concerned. This is still anyone's job to lose. Or game, but I'm gonna ask you real quick. There was a certain quote from Curtis Johnson, who is the wide receiver coach for the Saints. Long-time guy. He's been there since Breeze got there. He was one of Peyton's original hires in 2006. He talked about the kid from Tulane?
You're talking about Jalen McCleskey?
Yes, McCleskey.
Yeah.
And how McCleskey told the media, what he brings to this team is speed, which one I love to hear. Because now we have a quarterback who can throw it down the field, whether it's Taysom or Jameis. Taysom or Jameis. Good lord. But, interesting quote I heard him say. He said that McCluskey reminds him a lot of a younger Devery Henderson.
I like that.
And I find that very interesting because people forget that old core of the Henderson, Meacham, Moore, and Colston.
Fantastic.
That was a great core. And it wasn't like those guys were all-star or all pros. They had
the best receiving core in team history. I mean,
like each guy had a defined role, and physically, Colston was your dominant one. Line of in the slot against smaller linebackers and corners, or go across the middle, be your star possession guy, and that is really what Mike Thomas essentially is. If you break it down, it's what Mike Thomas is. He's a star possession receiver. And then you have your Meacham and Hendersons, who are guys who can go down the field, get the big home run plays. So you look at your Deontay Harris, maybe your McCleskey's, and then your Lance Moore.
That's the thing. We wouldn't need to worry about McCleskey making plays if Deontay Harris was just ready to rock and roll and go. Obviously the problem with Harris is that he's so undersized, and McCleskey has that over him. But Deontay Harris, we've seen what he can do when he's healthy, when he's not suspended as a wide receiver. And we just need more of that. But I do like the comments on McCleskey. Also, a lot of clips of...
I've been impressed by him.
Aesop Winston as well.
Yes.
Who Jameis Winston keeps calling him, I think his cousin is what he's been calling him. Got the same last name. And he's been having some really nice catches in camp as well. So, I'm liking the progress by these young guys. But
so Baker, too. And Kwon Baker. Kwon Baker as well.
I haven't seen any clips from him.
Not clips, but I've just seen some tweets that he's made a couple of nice catches.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, I actually haven't seen much on him at all, so that's good to hear. Yeah, and I really want him to make the roster. I think that he's the playmaker that we're going to need. So
I love it.
And just real quick, too, before we go.
Yeah.
For those of you that might not know, I think you all know by this point, though. But Deontay Harris... It was revealed that he was arrested for a DUI back in July, so last month. News came out a few days ago. It was right after we recorded our last podcast episode that he was arrested. And
Baltimore, right?
Yeah, where he's from. And Nick Underhill said that he usually carries a 2-game suspension with what he was arrested for and first-time offense.
So I would imagine it'd be a heavy suspension.
I would imagine it would be 2 games or less, but it depends on the severity. Obviously, he was released from jail the next morning, and I don't think he's been back. I obviously, not a lot of details have been coming out, but we know that he was arrested for DUI. Typically carries a 2-game suspension for a first-time offender, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, before we sign off here, did you see the video of Jameis running through the
pile or whatever those are, the pads?
The pad, where they try to teach ball security.
Pad fought back.
Yeah. I had so many people who aren't Saints fans DM me that tweet of the video, and they go, "Is this y'all's quarterback?" And I'm like, you know what? Yes. I'm proud to say Jameis Winston will be my QB1 until Sean Payton says otherwise.
Exactly.
Love to see it. I mean, any more thoughts on camp so far before we sign off for this week?
No, I'm going to need to see more. The quarterback battle is what we're going to need to pay attention to, though.
Yep.
And then, obviously, all the young guys. I'm excited for preseason to start, so.
Yeah, me too. I think for me, it's going to be cornerbacks. We know with Kwon Alexander, once he's healthy, I think that linebacker group is set. So if they can figure out their top 4 corners, excluding the nickel, who their top 4 outside corners are, or 3, I guess, if you will. Whether it's, we know it's going to be Lattimore, but Patrick Robinson, Prince Mukamara, I feel like Ken Crawley even. So as long as they figure out who this outside number 2 corner is, and maybe the top backup, then I think this defense really can carry this offense for some games that we just got to wait and see. I think that's the last piece of this defense, is figuring out who their left side corner, or sorry, is it left or right side? Left side?
Yeah, it'll be
left side corner, and then whoever that top backup is for both the left and right side corner. I think you're set defensively, so please, Patrick Robinson. I've been on this train for 16 years, it feels like. It is my time to shine. Let Patrick Robinson win the job.
We'll see. He's got to stay healthy.
He's got to stay healthy, and
the job's his. If he stays healthy,
yes,
with
I think
Lattimore out, the job is his.
I think so.
We'll see.
But yeah, I'm hyped about it. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at SaintsFPC. And as I mentioned, follow all these great guys we have covering this team, whether they're live in New Orleans at camp or they're at home tweeting about it. It's great conversation. They put out tons of great work. I feel like I've mentioned everybody earlier, but they're all great. Give them a follow. And that's going to do it for this episode. So, Dayton, awesome episode, as
Thanks
always.
for listening, guys.
Yep, that's going to do it. That's going to take care of things here. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at SaintsFPC. And until then, we'll have you guys recap for training camp week 2.